Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus gave us a message on how to live our lives for God. Love God, love one another. And all the message was simple, believing it was difficult, and living it out was even harder. In the end, after so many teachings and miracles, Jesus ends up giving his life intentionally out of love for us, and eventually rising again on the third day. And as we read over and over again the amazing life that Christ lived in all of God's glory within the Gospels, the message itself hasn't changed, but the people have. And if you all recall last week when Reverend Keith led us on a sermon Bible study through some various passages, we find that one of those passages is where Jesus' apostle named Simon Peter begins spreading the message right after Jesus' death and resurrection. To the point where, like Reverend Keith said, it looks like Jesus himself, if you took out Peter's name out of the story in Acts. Peter goes to the home of Tabitha, a faithful follower of Christ. Forgive me, I don't like using the word Dorcas. It means the same thing, so I'm just going to say Tabitha from this point onward. Tabitha, a faithful follower of Christ. She becomes ill to the point where she ends up actually passing away. Peter is rushed to her side immediately, and Peter comes by and says, she's just sleeping, and tells Tabitha to rise, and immediately she rises from the dead. It's just like a miracle that Jesus performed. It actually sounds like a lot like Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead in John chapter 11. You can go read that on your own. And although the people in the reading of Acts are different, the message is the same. Love God, love one another. And so Jesus takes this message and he gives it to his disciples, and the disciples give this message and give it to their disciples and to people like Saul, who has his own change of heart and then becomes Paul. And for 2,000 years, the message stays the same, but the people continue to change. Martyrs have lived and died for the cause. Miracles have been acknowledged by the church. Eras, kingdoms, and dynasties have come and gone. But it is the message through their own words and actions that have stood the test of time. And again, the phrase itself is simple. Believing it is hard. Living it out is even harder. Let's just put it in the context of Wesley. Over the 120 years, we've had dozens of pastors here at this church. We've probably served, if somebody wants to take a guess, somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 church members over the lifetime of this church. Probably going back somewhere around 5 or 6 generations of folks. This church has seen many amazing leaders in their own right, leading ministries, serving the community, upholding justice, and taking care of one another underneath the premise of I shin I rin, love God and love one another. We as Christians have come to believe in God and to love God and spread this message in this world because we've encountered God's grace through the people we've encountered here. And I've told you all that what brought me personally closer to God was someone who was already following God. And I recognized the message in their actions of words, and now I try to live my life like theirs. And so we went through the call to worship based upon Psalm 23. And we are reminded of that passage, probably most likely in funeral services, to be honest, that we are cared for by God. That in our darkest moments we are reminded that we are not alone, but we are guided and carried through these hard times. And I mean that both spiritually and physically. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. I breathe in those words, and I realize I exhale all the stress, all the worries, all the angers and all the problems and concerns that I have to deal with. For I do know that God is with me. We understand God's never-ending presence, and we also see the manifestation of Christ's presence through the people around us. For those people who pat us on the back or shake our hands or say hello. The people who give us chicken soup when we're sick or takes us to the doctor. Our reliance on God is comforting and also inspiring and driving. We learn about God and God's love through our parents, through our family members, our teachers, friends, and neighbors. We read about God's love and stories of God's love unfolding into the world like the story in Acts. But it's also written by a follower of Christ. We partake in communion, a tradition that goes all the way back to Christ himself, explaining the love given to us through his sacrifice and the new covenant poured out for us all. We are the sheep to our predecessors that go all the way back to Christ, the shepherd himself. We follow in the same footsteps of love, serving those around us and caring for those around us. Our tendency in our faith is to remember that we are sheep. We want to be guided by those who are more experienced, more knowledgeable, more Christian. We learn by studying, doing, talking, walking, and serving. And I think it's good to remember who we follow, because we do follow Christ and no one else. Amidst everything Christ said, we know that Christ says this to us: "My sheep know me." And amidst all of our certainty and uncertainty, our faith in Christ never falters. But I think also we forget eventually that it's not just about the message getting to us, but it's also for us to give out the message. That we are not just sheep to receive God's love and care. We are shepherds who share the message and care for others. Eventually, we tend to our own sheep. We share our own experiences with them, however many or few we have. And we share our knowledge in the form of book smarts or street smarts, but always in line with the same message. And so we create this lineage, this spiritual lineage of passing down love God and love one another. And there's many ways to describe this. Amongst ordained clergy, it's called apostolic succession. It's a very big word, where clergy lay hands on other clergy. And to some extent, the laying of hands goes all the way back to Jesus Christ himself. Others describe it more through the actions of life, that we go through lives being cared for by adults. And as we get older, we transition from adolescence into adulthood and become caretakers for the next generation. As Jesus once said to Peter, "Feed my sheep." Someone needs to take care of the flock, to help assist with leading them to greener pastures and still waters, to provide comfort and care, to pass on the message to the next generation of our congregation. We need people to show love and guidance to those around us. And it is the movement of spiritual adolescence into adulthood, and it transcends any age. I'm not talking about physical age. It is the understanding that new ideas or ways of thinking do not come from years of refinement or tradition. It comes from knowing the message of loving God and loving one another. And so I invite folks who've been here just one day or 4 decades to be a sheep and to follow Christ, but to also be shepherds and caretakers of this church and of our community. We are called to do this, to become leaders, to care for others, to bring visionary ideas, to serve those in need. You know, one thing that I run into as the emerging ministries minister is most folks being asked to do anything are very hesitant. And the reason for this hesitation is a long list of excuses, pardon me, of not having enough time, not feeling competent enough, not being here long enough here at this church, that I'm too old, I'm too young to be here, that you can find someone else who is much better at it. I hate running into these walls. I hate believing that if Christ asked you to feed his sheep, someone would go and say, maybe if I got the time, let me check my calendar here. Or, you can find a better shepherd than me. You need a younger, stronger shepherd. Or you need a shepherd with a really good 20 years of experience. From my own personal experience, if I were to let my own hesitation and anxieties get the best of me, I would have been too young to help out with the prime timers. I would have been too old to help out with the high school MYF ministries. I wouldn't have enough knowledge to be part of the scouting ministry or the technology committee. And I don't have kids right now, so I guess I shouldn't be part of any of the scouting ministries for that matter. If I were to have let my fears get to me and all my own insecurities, I would have told you I would have been too inexperienced to be a minister. And there are definitely times when I don't know why God has called me to take care of his sheep. But I do thank God that it has nothing to do with me or my insecurities. It has everything to do with God. And as much as I love God, I know that God calls me to love one another and has brought me to bring me that same message to you all. The same message of hope, inspiration, and passion. Love God and love one another. As much as I would hate to think that after so many generations of disciples, it boils down to the blind leading the blind, or the blind faith leading the blind of faith. Where my belief crosses from being a sheep to becoming a shepherd caretaker is in the message of Christ's love coming to life through our actions and words. To hit home and touch the life of someone in such a way that they become caretakers someday. That it inspires someone to get up and move and to use their God-given gifts and talents to share the same message that was given to you. And so, I don't have a new message for you all today. I echo the same words that Reverend Keith did last week. In fact, I echo the same words that we do every week in worship and in every ministry here at this church. Love God and love one another. Put it into your heart and translate that into your own context and passion. Discern for yourselves who are your shepherds and who are your sheep. Please, if you do not feel connected into this church, go into any of the many ministries. And if you do not feel comfortable in any of the ministries, come talk to any of the pastors. We're willing to start new ministries. For those who have been in ministries for so long or been leaders of ministries for so long, please invite everybody. Seriously, invite everybody. One of our biggest parts of the wellness ministry that became so successful, we just asked people. Find yourself in knowing your struggles and insecurities and lack of knowledge, wisdom, and skill, that no matter what, you are cared for and supported by those around you. Find yourself in knowing that you too are asked to take care of God's sheep. Give special attention to detail and patience in teaching what you know about God to others, and show your passion in all that you do for one another. For in everything that you say, everything that you do, even the things you say, you don't say, and don't do, it all contributes to the message, love God, and love one another. Grace and peace to you all. Amen.